What's up, guys? You guys are here for another episode of Interviewing You, Interviewing Me. Today we have a special guest that it took forever to set this interview up, but we finally have it set up now. A guy who I've worked with on plenty of productions before, different short films and everything. Has a great and amazing business. Two businesses, I would kind of say, right? In a sense. Two different kind of production companies. One specializes in something very particular. And a good friend of mine, Mr. Bryce Fritzel from Fritzel Media. How you doing?
That's my name. I'm doing well.
That's awesome, man. I'm glad to be here in your studio. It looks really awesome in here. The lighting is very, very good. Yeah. This might be the highest production value of the Interviewing You, Interviewing Me segments that I've had in ever. So thank you for adding to that.
Yep.
But let's go ahead. Let's get to these interviews or get to these questions. So first of all, tell us who you are and what you do, and what it is you're here today to talk about.
Sure. Well, like you said, I own two companies right now. So the first one I started when I was 17. It's called Fritzel Media. Very creative name. But I basically started out doing some basic video work, like the occasional music video for some local talent. Then I slowly got into wedding films, things like that. And then as I started investing in more equipment, I started doing bigger productions. Suddenly I was doing commercial advertisements. I've done a lot of the commercials that you might see in a movie theater, things like that. And then I started getting into short film cinematography. That's when I started to meet people like you.
Yep.
So a lot of those took place in like Fort Wayne, working with people like Taylor Fredericks, Austin Sarver.
Shout out to Film Fam.
All those guys. So that's when I started getting into some of the bigger productions. I did have some other cool opportunities. Like there was a feature film that came, actually flew out from California to the Warsaw Winona Lake area called Nouvelle Vie, which means new life in French. And they put out a casting call and really just looking for local acting talent. But I was like, hey, I do camera work. Can I be in your camera department? And they hired me. So I was on a really big production, and we're talking like, you know, the camera department itself having like, 8 people. So I was one of the video assist people there, and that was like a month straight, like 12-15-hour days. It was crazy, but I learned a lot.
That's awesome.
And then right after that, I did one of my own feature films with a friend of mine named Claude Clark. We did Touch, which was a romantic comedy. And then I just keep going. Nowadays I'm much more into the bigger commercial advertisements. Still doing weddings, things like that.
Help pay the bills.
Oh yeah, everything pays for the bills.
That's awesome, man.
That's the goal, anyways.
Very busy, very busy. That's awesome.
Busy. Yes,
and that's cool. I think I remember you telling me about the story of a feature film coming here.
Yeah.
And whatnot. And that kind of brings me to a question that I'll get to a little bit later on, but kind of about how, Indiana's trying to bring in more.
They're trying
very hard, hopefully, to bring in more feature films and bigger productions here to Indiana. So that
keep people from moving away from here.
Right, exactly. Everybody wants to go off, to like Chicago or
or even out to LA. Just not here.
Exactly. And look, I'm kind of to blame for that too. I plan on moving to California in August, but anyway, that's besides the fact. So with all that said, what got you into this world of filmmaking? Like, what got you into creating all of these things? Not just creating stories, but really just taking on different productions and adding to the marketing and promo for people's businesses. I mean, what got you started?
That's kind of a hard question, because honestly, I still don't quite know. Really why I'm doing it. My original passion was always in like science and physics and math. All the way up until, even into high school, I was taking like AP Physics, AP Calculus, stuff like that. Yeah. And that was my goal, was I was going to, maybe go to like Purdue for engineering and then head out to like MIT or Caltech or something for physics.
I can see that.
And so what ended up happening was, in some of these physics classes, we were using what's called high-speed imaging equipment to do some of the research. And so if you've ever seen like Mythbusters or Time Warp or shows like that, they always have like the high-speed replay, which is really good for doing science experiments and things like that. So you can like measure the velocity of bullets. You can look at, really high-speed detonations, see how things, fail on like a fundamental level. And I thought that stuff was fascinating. So I ended up buying my own little high-speed camera. Which is
at the time.
This is back when I was like 15 years old.
Wow.
So this is just a Casio Exelum camera, which at the time was one of the only, you know, affordable cameras. This was like maybe $300 or $400, but it could shoot up to 1,000 frames a second.
Wow.
We're talking like 200 by 60 pixels, like super low resolution. But I mean, I still have it because I love this camera because this is where I started.
Exactly.
But so I'd film all sorts of stuff with that, you know, just for fun. And then so I wanted to, you know, try doing something like a YouTube channel where, you know, you see like slow-mo guys, things like that, where they, you know, they've got a high-speed camera, they'll go do something crazy. So I needed a real camera to show like, you know, high-definition footage, because that's not high definition at all. So so I ended up getting a Canon 60D, mostly just for like the behind-the-scenes look of what I was doing. And then people start asking me like, hey, you've got some cool camera equipment, will you film this music video for me? I was like, sure, never really done that, but I'll give it a go. and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And I started, you know, getting more equipment. I got things like a Canon C100, or my Sony FS700, which is down there, which that's even a better high-speed camera than that. And I just
not
kept
the Phantom,
going. Oh no, not the Phantom. Better than the Casio. It just kind of snowballed, and I really got like a passion for camera equipment, and I don't really know why. It was just really fun to film stuff, and just to see, you know, watching something explode is, you know, interesting just in person, but then when you see things, you know, break apart at that, you know, small microsecond level, it's crazy. It's incredible what you can see. So it's like having a superpower of seeing things that you just can't see with your naked eye. So then I ended up getting a lease for a Phantom camera, which is a Phantom Miro, which that's out on a rental right now, which we'll talk about rentals later. But and then now I've got this bad boy over here, which if you've ever seen the slow-mo guys, the Phantom Flex. It's basically identical to that camera. This is a broadcast version of that, but it's kind of a beast of a camera, and that's one of the cameras that my second company is based off of. But yeah, so it took me by surprise. I didn't expect it. I expected to be getting a doctorate in physics right now, but here I am running a production company, and it was just one of those things where I didn't realize I would be good at it. But since I was good at it, I kind of just took advantage of that and ran with it.
That's awesome.
And here I am.
That's how you should. I mean, like, I think it's interesting because, like, I feel like usually the story how a lot of filmmakers get started always kind of deals with certain movies they may have watched, or certain, like, you know, just creating their own films when they were very, very young and all that kind of stuff. And, like, I think that's cool that the science part of it is what got you pulled in.
My experience is almost purely technical. Like, I don't think of myself as an artistic person very much at all. And so, like, when I approach a film set, it's almost always from a technical point of, like, you know, how lighting works on a fundamental level, and you know, what's the color science, like what's the psychology behind different colors, how that makes you feel. More of a technical approach to composition, and some things end up looking creative and artistic, but it's almost never intentional. So it's more of a I'm really good at the technical side, and I just hope that I can be artistic at the same time.
Right, and I think it's good to have technical people like that on set.
Yes, for sure.
Instead of just all the super artistic, weird kind of people. Like, it's not.
Those
it's definitely
weirdos.
Yeah, those weirdos who just, you know what I mean. Everything has a meaning to it and stuff like that. But
Which
I
is
think
important, but I'm not good at it.
So I think that's pretty cool. I mean, how this science of everything got together. And it's cool that a camera like that can shoot that many that frame rate. I've never would have expected that. No, but of course, at that low resolution,
very specialized equipment. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, okay, two businesses that you have. Fritzel Media, and then High Speed Rentals is the one that the Phantom Flex is part on.
Also creatively named Rent High Speed.
Rent High Speed.
Which makes it easier for people, you know, searching it up on YouTube. Is like, I want to rent a high-speed camera. Hopefully Rent High Speed gets up there first.
Awesome.
But basically, so cameras like the Phantom, or there's other companies like Photron, they're very, very expensive to buy, and even the rentals are expensive as well. So like, if you wanted to go get even one of the lower end Phantom cameras, we're talking like, you know, $1,000 or $2,000 a day for this stuff. And so that was something that always held me back when I was sort of building my businesses is anytime I wanted a high-speed camera, I had to go with something cheaper, like an FS700, which isn't the best high-speed camera out there.
Yeah.
So that was sort of a motivating factor for me. Is like, hey, if I'm going to own a Phantom, I could also take advantage of the fact that I'm not going to ask for $2,000 a day for this stuff.
Right.
You know, because there's people out there who just can't afford that and need a Phantom. So I started offering rates that are considerably lower than that. You know, especially a camera like this, which this version of it is like nearly $80,000. Could rent out for quite a bit of money a day, but you know, we're talking, you know, it might only be like $500 or $700 a day, which is extremely reasonable for a camera like this. So what I end up getting is a lot of the people who have been going to these other companies end up seeing my page, so I get a lot more of the business now. So
that's good.
So this pays for itself much quicker than I'd ever have to pay for it.
Exactly.
Which
that's the best part.
Awesome.
And I think me personally, just from the companies that I know, I don't think there's a lot of companies that do high speed rentals like that at all. You know, you might be the only one that I know of.
Certainly, I was going to say, certainly not Midwest, definitely not Indiana.
Yeah, not Indiana at all. You might be the only one, and that's great, because a lot of people really, like, the stuff that you can do with that, the stuff that I've already seen, I mean one of a kind.
I don't think people would expect, you know, some guy in Warsaw, Indiana, has got 2 Phantoms. Like, it's just not something you come across. So that's sort of the market that I tried to take advantage of, is like, I've got experience with using Phantoms since I was, you know, 16 years old, and there's just nobody else offers it. So that's sort of that little market niche that I took advantage of, and it's working well so far.
That's awesome. So basically, once you actually bought the first Phantom that you got, that's when you decided, okay, this is a company that I want to make.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so with Fritzel Media, I mean, how would you kind of, I guess, differentiate those two businesses? I mean, what kind of different productions do you deal with?
Right, so Fritzel Media is more of a, in general, film production company. Okay. So that could be anywhere from the wedding films to, you know, I've even done a little bit of real estate, not so much, but, you know, I've done that. It's a lot of the commercial advertisements, or if someone wants to book me to provide cinematography for their short film or whatever, which I'm talking to a guy right now who wants to hire me to shoot his whole feature film. So like, it's more of a wide diversity of projects that I take on as Fritzel Media, and then Rent High Speed is specifically for, you know, the Phantoms and the high speed stuff. So like, back in December, I went out to over in Pennsylvania. To Gettysburg, and they literally just had a massive explosion they wanted filmed with a Phantom, so they booked me to drive all the way over there and just film an explosion, and it was really fun.
That's cool.
Yeah, which is actually, it's the one at the end of my my high speed reel. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's fun.
Like, so I mean, basically people have found you just through the internet, basically.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, almost entirely for the Rent High Speed. For Fritzel Media, 90% of those clients have been word of mouth. So like, I work with someone, you know, they really enjoy the work that I do, and suddenly some other company has heard about me through them. And so a lot of those productions are around Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, places like that.
That's awesome.
But the Rent High Speed, like, I send Phantoms out to California all the time, down to Florida, which there's one coming back from Florida right now, my Miro. So yeah, that's a much more widespread company, and Fritzel Media is much more local.
For sure. Okay, I like that. That's definitely cool. I mean, okay, so that leads me to what kind of, with both of these companies, you've already done so much. I mean, I've seen all the different commercials. Of course, we worked on short films together and everything like that. Like, what kind of work do you really aspire to do with both different companies? I mean, because with the amount of work that you've done, like, there's plenty more work to accomplish, but it's like, what are you still kind of waiting to get called for? What are you still waiting to do?
I want to be able to provide really high-end cinematography for, you know, could be feature films or could be commercial advertisements. Like the wedding films, those are good at paying the bills and they're fun, but they're not like my ultimate goal is to be like the best wedding filmer.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I feel like it's oversaturated with wedding videography.
Yeah,
you know
it's getting there for sure.
Yeah.
But I want to provide like really specialized high-end cinematography. So whether that's, you know, like a commercial where, you know, they need a Phantom on a robot arm to do this very interesting like movement or whatever. So like I filmed a coffee commercial for Fire Department Coffee not too long ago.
So we'll link that in the description box below.
Yeah, and So they wanted to do a really different approach to the coffee, so I ended up doing these really cool like macro high-speed shots of like the beans falling, like bouncing off a table, like getting this fireball to come in through it. I'm sure that's played like 8 times right now, some of those shots. But it's like I want to provide a really like different approach to stuff like this, because it's easy enough to shoot just a basic commercial, but I want to provide that really specialized touch of like taking things to the next level. That's really what I enjoy doing. And then that's basically a blend of those two companies. Is I want to provide the high-end cinematography, and a lot of what I do with that involves phantoms. Like they just happen to merge pretty naturally.
Right. That's awesome. So, okay, I mean, kind of a little bit on technical specs with the Phantom.
Okay.
Like, so what is the highest frame rate you can get with the Phantom? Phantom Flex
With this one, that maxes out at about 220,000 frames per second, which actually isn't that high compared to some other Phantoms.
Really?
So like the V2512 will film, well over 1 million frames per second. Wow. So like, I went up to Michigan last year, and they actually, my frame rates weren't high enough for them because they needed a very fast bullet slowed down to the point where they could see an LCD screen breaking apart. Wow. And this camera's not fast enough for that, which is surprising. So I rented out a different camera called an HX3, which is a military grade high-speed camera.
Wow. And it's not Phantom like
no, it's not Vision Research branded. But that one you could do 1.4 million frames per second. It's ridiculous.
That is crazy.
But this one maxes out at about 220,000. It can shoot up to 2.6K resolution, and it'll do 1600 frames per second. Nice. Sort of the bread and butter for this camera is 1080p. It'll shoot 2500 frames per second. You drop that a little bit down to 720p, you're at 5300 frames per second. So it does really well at like the high resolution,
which is good.
Rates, right? And then there's other cameras that specialize in the high speed, but not necessarily at the best quality.
Right. Yeah. And that was another question. I mean, basically, like, have you actually used this on like a short film at all? I think we had used one of the Phantoms on from here.
Right now, the highest production value this has been on is probably that coffee commercial. Like that was shot with a cinematic intention. And this is a pretty new camera for me, so it hasn't been on too many productions yet, but besides that explosion out in Gettysburg, which was for a film, I haven't seen them use it yet.
I was about to say, they just had you just to film an explosion.
This one right there. Yeah, so that one was shot with the Miro, and then that right there was shot with this, the V642.
That's awesome.
It's pretty cool. But
that is cool. Wow, I can just see it right there, just how that looks. That's
cool. But yeah, so that it hasn't been on too many productions yet, but that's sort of the intention of the Phantom Flex is for like so have you ever seen like Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows, like movies like that, the Dread movie that came out in 2012. There's all sorts of movies that use
specific shots like that, and that's awesome. I mean, okay, so I mean basically with the Phantom being, because I mean when I first heard of the Phantom, it was probably sometime I was in high school back in like 2012 or something, and I didn't really know too much about what Vision Research was really about. I didn't really know that they had made that high speed kind of cameras, but why the Phantom instead of something like the Red or an Ari? Because of course people put Red and Ari as the top two digital cinema camera brands.
When it comes to standard cinematography, I would totally choose an Ari over a Phantom, because those are two different specialties. So like an Ari Alexa is intended for very high dynamic range, very clean quality, but frame rates aren't super high. Like I think maybe the Alexa Mini or the Ari Amira can maybe shoot like 200 frames a second, but they're not meant for like that speed.
Right.
So these cameras are meant for speed. So if I was ever shooting anything that needed high frame rates, go to a Phantom. If I ever need anything that just needs the best image quality out there, I would go with like a Red Epic or an Ari Alexa or something like that. So they're very specialized apartments. Now there are cameras like the Phantom Flex 4K, which kind of sits in the middle. So it shoots incredible 4K quality, on par with like Ari and Red, but it can do that up to 1,000 frames per second. So that's kind of like that middle camera that can do both. So if I could only choose one camera to ever own, it'd probably be a Flex 4K.
That's awesome. I mean, because I know Red, I think with the Dragon X, I was saying that I want to invest in. Like I think they can do 5K at I think it said 96 frames per second or 120 frames per second with
Right.
5K, which is, I mean, that's pretty damn good.
Which
for
is
5K.
usually plenty for most productions.
Right. But yeah, something super high speed, yeah, definitely got to go with Phantom. I mean, with, I guess, for a more, not necessarily consumer, but something that's a little bit more easier for a production company to buy, besides like the military grade camera you're talking about, is there something over what Vision Research does, or is Vision Research, I guess, the top tier, basically?
Right. I would say that Vision Research is probably the pinnacle of high-speed cameras that are both fast and excellent quality. And then there's other companies that are better than Vision Research when it comes to speed. So like the company NAC, which makes the HX3.
Yeah, okay.
They are meant for speed. Like I think they have a camera that can do 10 million frames per second. Like, and
That's
we're
insane.
talking like that recording time is like split second. So they have to do like light triggers and stuff. So if they have an explosion go off, it triggers that camera within, a 1,000th of a second. Wow. And all they get is that initial explosion, and then it's done. Because it's an incredibly high frame rate.
Wow. That's cool. I would like to. That is awesome. Yeah. I've never even expected something like
10 million frames per second. And I've never used a camera like that, but I've seen some shots. I mean, you can, like, bullets pretty much stop.
Yeah.
We're talking bullets that are traveling thousands of feet per second, and they just stop.
Yeah.
And, you can see, like, the way the bullets, like, break apart inside of different materials, and it's incredibly cool stuff, but that stuff is well outside of even my scope. That's very, very specialized stuff.
Is that something that you think possibly for Rent High Speed that you actually want to, like, invest in later on down the road, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, something like an HX3 I'd like to be able to offer. So like right now, the 3 cameras I have on my website are my FS700, my Miro, and my V642. And it's a pretty distinct, like, what are your needs? So like the FS700, if you pair it with a Shogun Inferno, will give you 4K 120 frames per second or 2K 240. And that's meant for shooting films or anything that you want to look cinematic, but not super high frame rates. The Miro is a nice portable Phantom, which is, high-speed cameras often aren't very portable. They need to be plugged into a power source. They need to be tethered to a laptop. They oftentimes don't even have the screen. Like this, I have to use my Shogun
which looks
with
awesome.
SDI cable because it just doesn't have a screen on it. So the Miro has a flip-out screen. It is battery-powered. But it's not quite as powerful as this camera. But this camera, you've got to plug it in. You've got to tether some sort of laptop or screen to it. So it's like, what are your needs? Will you be in a studio environment? Do you need to be out on the field? Those kind of questions will determine what sort of camera. And so I'd like to have a pretty wide diversity of cameras, even all the way up to millions of frames per second.
Yeah, which is wild. I mean, does that already come with the EF standard mount on it?
So this one I can swap out lens mounts on it. So I've got
kind of like what Red does, kind of a little bit.
Kind of, yeah. So I've got an EF mount on it right now. I also have what's it called?
The PL?
PL mount, yeah. I think I have a PL mount for this one. I don't use it very often because I don't have PL lenses because they're expensive.
Very expensive,
But I do offer it because other production companies have PL lenses, so I'll swap it out and then I'll ship it to them.
Awesome. But you like using the EF mainly with that?
Yeah, because I've got my Rokinon Cine lens kit, so it's primarily what I shoot with.
That's awesome. So with Fritzel Media then, since the FS700 I guess is kind of the main camera you have, do you plan at all kind of upgrading that?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I know me personally, Sony cameras, they're very great, but I think their menus are probably the worst out of any cameras ever.
Absolutely.
Hate the menus on Sony cameras.
Yep, which is why we're shooting this with Canons.
Exactly. Very easy to go through.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think you want to upgrade?
Yeah, I would love to shoot with like a Red Raven or even like a...
What about Black Magic? You think those would be kind of...
If I were to shoot with a Black Magic, it'd probably be the Ursa Mini Pro 4.6K. Austin's got one of those, and its dynamic range is great. It's kind of limited when it comes to frame rates and things like that. So I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, the FS700 does a lot, but it's bulky and it needs that on it. If I want to shoot anything that's better than like 8-bit nonsense.
Does it only tap out at 8-bit?
Yeah, internally it'll shoot just 420 8-bit.
Just like the
1080p.
C200. I was gonna try to invest in the Canon C200, but
C200
MP4 or I think it just raw 8-bit. And it's like, Or no, MP4 8-bit, I believe,
Right.
420.
Yeah, other than that, you're shooting with their what is it, raw light,
yeah,
whatever that is.
So.
I mean, C200 is a great camera, but
Yeah.
kind of wish they added a little bit more. As
I
far
wish
as,
at
like,
least ProRes they could have put in there.
ProRes would be great.
That'd be great for it. Then I'd probably buy that instead. But since it's cheaper.
that's a good choice too.
Yeah, I guess brand wise for some of those different cameras, Vision Research is such a prestigious kind of company that makes very particular cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely part of my upbringing with film is kind of being in tune with the different cameras and brands and just all lights and all that kind of stuff. I guess when it comes to some of these brands like a Sony, Canon, Blackmagic, Nikon even, is there do you have like a favorite, I guess, standard brand that you've worked with, I guess, the majority of your career?
The one I've worked with the most would be Canon. So I've had a T3i, I've had a 60D, I've had a 5D Mark II, I have a 1DX Mark II now, I have a C100. I've worked with a C100 Mark II. I've used a C200 once or twice. They're a really reliable company. They're very consistent with their quality. They're just a little bit limited when it comes to like the higher frame rates and things like that.
And even just their offerings of 4K is very limiting.
Yeah, so like the 1DX Mark II does shoot 4K, but it's in a really bizarre format called Motion JPEG. And the bit rates are incredibly high, and it's very good quality, but it's a lot of data.
Yeah.
Like almost as much as if I was shooting RAW.
Yeah.
But I don't have the benefits of RAW with that. It's still 422 8-bit, but it's a lot of data, and it's kind of annoying. But it gives you that very, very clean quality. So it's a trade-off for sure.
Yeah, Canon, I love Canon, but they are definitely, I don't know,
They're starting to fall behind.
Yeah, they're starting to fall behind. Like, they just had that, I think it's called the EOS RP. I don't know if you had heard much about that.
Yeah, I saw it was pretty disappointing.
Yeah, because it doesn't even have 24 frames per second in 1080, which is crazy. I think it's one of the things that a lot of people were complaining about.
Yeah, it's almost like they intentionally made an amateur camera. It's like, what are you doing, Canon?
Even worse than the R, the mirrorless camera they have. That I think it's just the R or whatever. So very Canon's very weird with it. I think Sony has definitely kind of caught up, and same with Panasonic too. I always forget about the GH4s and GH5s and all that kind of stuff. And I've used Panasonic a lot recently. Like I've rented them. Mainly because they're one of the cheaper, I guess, 4K cameras that a lot of budgets would allow. And they're nice and everything, but I guess I'm just not a huge fan of, I think all of their cameras damn near Micro Four Thirds.
Yeah, so each of the companies definitely have their strengths. And like for Canon, it's obviously color science and just consistent good quality. But when it comes to Sony, their low light's incredible. Like with the A7 Mark III, that's
crazy,
incredible stuff. Like you can almost see in the dark, which is
pitch
cool.
Black. Yeah,
but their color science is a bit lacking, and some of their autofocus just isn't that great. Like Canon's top dog with autofocus right now, with their dual pixel autofocus. So it's hard to pick one company that's consistent across the board. Like obviously, if you can go with a red, go with a red. But there's in such a different market than some of these other cameras.
These are kind of, I guess is the right term, the prosumer in a way. It kind of aids to some of them. Like the M50 that I'm shooting on right here, I just bought this for $700. It's pretty technically cheap. You know what I mean? Compared to what the C100 is. I think the Mark 1 now is just a little bit cheaper now, but Mark 2 is what, $1,500, maybe $1,200, something like that.
The Mark II?
Yes.
Mark II is still close to $2,500.
Close to it. But definitely
the Mark I's down to maybe $1,800. Yeah. Now,
but a lot of these companies, they provide more affordable camera equipment. While Red and Ari, the cheapest Red is $15,000.
They don't care about the amateurs. You're either gonna drop this money or you're not.
Exactly. Ari, the Alexa Mini, I think is I want to say what's $30,000 for the body alone.
At least, I'm sure. Yeah.
So and I guess that's a very interesting question. Is what do you like? Who would you choose the most, Red or Ari? It's always a battle between them because people can say they're the best two cinema camera companies.
I think. I really love the look of Ari.
Yeah.
There's more their color science, very very cinematic looking, like the Ari Alexa 65, which is an IMAX format camera. Was it the Revenant?
Yeah.
Which was filmed completely in that 65 millimeter look, and it's beautiful. it's the closest I've ever seen to like just a window between you and whatever reality they're trying to present.
Yeah.
I think it's the best look that exists right now. And right now, Ari has the best look as far as the most natural and just the cleanest look. Like it's as if there's just a window between you and whatever reality they're trying to present.
Absolutely.
Now when it comes to Red, I would say the Red is the best when it comes to trying to like create a reality that doesn't exist. So like with the Hobbit movies or whatever, like
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. And like it's
that's a good example. That's probably the best example I've heard of changing those two camera companies. Like keep going. I like that. I like
so I would like so Red is very good at capturing an enormous amount of data, and then you can just do whatever you want with that. I mean, obviously you can do it with Ari as well, but I feel like Ari has its place with, which I've shot one film with Ari before, and it was that Nouvelle Vie movie.
Okay.
And they shot with 2 Ari Alexas, and it's just like there's no separation between you and what's in front of the camera. I think that's where Ari really stands out.
Yeah.
And then the Reds are just meant for creating this, epic, pardon the pun on epic, but just this epic other reality, and just I don't know. It's
a stark difference, especially when you hear that all of the films that are usually nominated at the Oscars is always Ari. You know what I mean? Like a majority of them really aren't Red.
Yeah. If you're deep into visual effects work, I would go with Red. Like I feel like Reds have been used with that the most often, and they're really good at capturing like the raw data as far as like color information and stuff, and that's what I would use if I was going to shoot any visual effects work, which I don't very often at all. So that's why I would use an Ari before I would use a Red.
Yeah, I think especially too like Red also with their I think their highest of course resolution is 8K, and of course the Ari Alexa doesn't even really shoot at 4K. It shoots at 2K, right?
Yeah, it shoots at like 2 point something or maybe like close to 3K. I don't know, but it's because like the sensors are shot in a grid of 2 green pixels, red and blue, and when you convert that information into displaying it on a screen, there's called your Bayer algorithm, which is basically converting a 2x2 grid of pixels into one color, and so that takes like a 4K image and actually makes it smaller. So Ari kind of skips that middle ground and shoots it at that what it knows it's gonna be, and it doesn't have to worry about that weird algorithm of converting that, and so that's why their quality is top notch. And so you can shoot less than 4K and it looks the same as another camera on 4K, because at the end of the day they have to go through this different algorithm to convert it, and it's basically the same thing.
And also Red, I think, and I pay attention to Red a lot more than I do Ari, but like with Red, I think they're very good with how they've been branding and marketing themselves. This last year, I would say. I mean, they have a kind of like a little tie-in with Facebook now building. I don't know if you ever heard about that. They're doing some kind of like is it like 360 cameras or something they're doing, which is pretty crazy. I'll have to put a link down there because I did save the link on Facebook. And then of course they're selling the Red Raven in some Apple stores now. Which is crazy.
Yeah, they have been for a while.
It's kind of interesting how Red has marketed their brand. I feel like Ari is still kind of exclusive in a sense. But I think more exclusive with their cameras. I feel like with their lighting, they're a lot more I guess notable and seen a little bit more.
Ari is a much older brand. Ari's been around for a very long time, and so they basically have equipment in all aspects of filmmaking. So they have excellent lighting, and they have excellent cameras.
The best lighting.
They've got really good lenses. I mean, they're kind of like a full-fledged production support company, and Red is almost exclusively for their cameras, and they've got some like different cine lenses, but
and I think Red too. I mean, could you ever see them kind of trying to expand more onto Ari's level with something like a 60 like that? The RE65 or now the RE-LF, the large format. Like, do you think they could do something similar?
They have with their Monstro VistaVision, which is a full frame, which isn't quite as big as like IMAX format, but they're getting close. So their Monstro VistaVision shoots 8K full frame, which is
wild,
which is crazy,
which is
very expensive.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I've only been on one production that has shot with a red. A lot of other bigger productions I've been on have always shot with Aries, and I mean, I definitely believe too that the Alexa Mini probably it looks a lot better than a lot of red stuff that I've seen, but I feel like when I see red cameras, I always see like music videos. A lot of Netflix stuff is being shot with red now.
Yes.
So I mean, I guess I can always tell the difference. This was shot on red, or this was shot with,
Ari is just a little bit creamier.
Yeah.
It's just got that nice, pleasant look to it. I think, anyways.
Right. Awesome. So okay. So now to go on to a little bit more of a smaller kind of topic, but more on just filmmaking here in Indiana specifically. Okay. And I want to get back to the topic of, Indiana trying to bring these actual big projects to, bring these different projects to Indiana. So, I mean, that project that you shot, how long ago was that? And I guess what was what was in your mind was like, okay, there's a project being shot here, a feature film. Was it like a big budget? Like, what was your thoughts of that coming to Indiana?
Well, in terms of this area, it was very high budget. In terms of California, it was considered low budget.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the budget was like in the millions of dollars. I didn't quite know what to expect when they showed up. But it was... I don't know, it was one of those things where I didn't realize what I was getting myself into.
Right.
And then suddenly we're doing 15-hour days for a month straight, and it's just like, this is crazy. Like,
yeah.
But like,
especially for Indiana.
I mean, we're shooting with 2 Arri Alexas at the same time. This was, I think, probably 3 summers ago. But shooting with 2 Arri Alexas, with, I think it was maybe Cook
lenses.
Prime Cine lenses.
Great lenses.
And they have like a full-fledged grip department and electric department, and like
usually you won't find
it was
that
a real legitimate film set, and that's the first time I had ever been on one like that. And like everyone has a specific task, which is very different from the filmmaking you and I usually do, which is where one person might be handling almost the entire camera department sometimes.
Yeah.
Which can be a lot, but so like this person, like we had a director of photography, we had 2 camera operators, we had someone that was there exclusively for glide cam work, or steady cam work, I guess would be more appropriate to say. And I got to handle a lot of like what's known as video village, which is like the director gets like these 2 screens that are wirelessly connected to both cameras all the time. So I got to like handle the communications with cameras to that. It's like a very specific task, but you're still moving all the time. So like there's enough work. So like they're moving very, very fast. So it's like if you don't know what you're doing, they're gonna notice, and you're gonna fall behind, and you're not gonna show up on set the next day. So like it's very. Like it's very tense sometimes, but it's a lot of fun. And it's like I learned more in that month about filmmaking than I had in the last probably 3-4 years of my life trying to figure it out on my own.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, like I know because when I went to California last August, I worked with my cousin. He's a first AD out in the Bay Area, and just definitely how he was running the set and how everything was moving along. Like, it's very tense sometimes.
Yeah,
and sometimes, like, you can't stop to think. Sometimes you gotta...
It has to be a very well-oiled machine, or else it falls apart.
Yeah, and it's definitely... I guess, does that, like, working on bigger productions like that, is that kind of something that kind of intimidates you sometimes a little bit? I know for me, the majority of bigger productions that I've been on definitely can be intimidating in that way.
For sure. I mean, that was the first time I had been on one, so it was intimidating. For sure at first, but then you kind of just like get into the rhythm of it. So like after the first, I don't know, maybe 3-4 days, I kind of got it. So like you learn a lot of like even just walkie-talkie lingo. Like it's very specific, like how you need to talk on a film set, but it's very efficient. So that, and just like learning, like film has a very specific lingo, and it's like things like a clothespin you call a C47, or just like a extension cord you call a stinger. And like it's very
different.
It's its own language for sure.
It's like military talk in a sense.
Kind of, for sure. And it's, I don't know, it's a lot to learn, and it's very intimidating at first. But now that I've been through it, I wouldn't be nervous to do it again.
To do it again, exactly.
Because it was so much. It was so much work, and
I mean, you could even offer, like you were saying, like for productions that would need something like a high speed, like a Phantom Flex, like you would be able to offer people that, you know, that ability basically for that, you know, for their film.
So back then I didn't own either that or the Miro, but I did have a very old Phantom called a Miro 3, and it maxed out at like maybe 800 by 600 pixels. So it was mostly for like the research aspect, not the film aspect. And I knew it wouldn't have a place on that set. Like that would not match with Alexa footage at all. But they basically told me like, yeah, if you have a real like higher end Phantom, like that's like they told me these are people, you know, that are straight out of California. Like, yeah, if you own a Phantom, then you've got a pretty nice like foot in the door as far as that stuff. Awesome. So that was one of the motivations that, you know, launched me into getting Phantoms, was talking with those people.
And just so many opportunities come. I mean, that's kind of why I want to get the Red. Not just because I love Red and I love the footage, but opportunities with, oh, you have a Red? Okay, well, now we'll hire you for a job, or I can rent it out to people. And,
there are people who hire mostly off of brand.
Which is kind of weird to me. I haven't witnessed that with how long I've been doing it, but I guess a lot of businesses sometimes want bigger production or bigger, you know, they want that quality.
There are some production companies out there who will not work with you if you don't have a Red or an Ari or whatever.
Which is crazy. I mean, I know my cousin, he worked on a Samsung commercial, and they were like filming stuff to sell like 8K TVs.
Oh yeah.
And just I remember the stuff he was saying,
very high standards.
They had to film like tigers and stuff to show on this 8K TV, and like I forget how many like Reds they had, but I mean they had like a whole bunch. I think they had like not the Monstro.
The Helium.
They had the Helium.
Yeah.
And they had like 4 or 5 of them on set to film all these different things going on for this commercial. I'm like,
and if you show up with a C100, you're just gonna laugh in your face.
Yeah.
It's just not gonna work.
Yeah, which is crazy. But okay, back we went off on a tangent there, but definitely back for Indiana. Was it like an Indiana cast at all that was put into that film? Or?
There were some people from here that were casted in that for sure. A lot of the lower end titles, but there were people like Terry O'Quinn. Like he was on set quite a few times. Cool. So there were some like bigger names on that set, which obviously flew out with the production.
Right.
But they had a lot of like other positions, especially extras, that they just used local talent for that, because it wouldn't make sense to fly out 100 extras. You can find extras.
I don't know if any who the hell would ever do that. That sounds crazy.
I don't know.
But definitely, I mean, do you think it's possible that that the lawmakers can make that happen to where we can start bringing bigger productions here?
We need more incentive for sure. Indiana's not very good at that, but Michigan's been getting pretty good at that.
Michigan's been good. Of course, they have Detroit. I mean, well, kind of linked to Detroit and Chicago in a sense. Like Transformers had shot in Gary. Actually, just last week, I went to the abandoned church that they had filmed in one of them Transformers.
Really? Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, but I guess Gary, in a sense, they were looking for that broken down kind of area, and you know,
which that's kind of what happened with Nouvelle Vie, was they needed a very specific feel for their film, and they decided on the Winona Lake, Warsaw area because it just matched what they were looking for.
And they filmed the entire production there.
Probably 90% of it. They had some flashbacks that took place. I think they actually they either went to France or they went somewhere that looked like France. I wasn't there for those production days, but seeing it in the movie, I could tell which parts were obviously not shot here.
Yeah.
But you know, being a French, it wasn't a French-based movie, but they had some motives in it that were based off of some like French history, I guess.
Sure. I mean, just the name itself, Nouvelle Vie, definitely got to have something with French in it. That's cool. I mean, I think the lawmakers hopefully will make it happen, but I feel like with my time being here, you know, since like I said, leave in August, I don't really think they'll have it in by that time. But, you know, the best thing is about Indiana now is not having to really pay for location, you know, fees and stuff like that, and certain different, you know, certain things.
People are a little bit, I don't know if I'd say nicer here, but people don't have the mindset of if a film is involved, I can ask for money to do something. That's definitely the mindset over in California for sure. Is that if someone wants to film on your property, it's well within your right to ask for quite a bit of money, just because that's how it works out there.
Right.
But there's a lot of people here who are more understanding of like, oh yeah, you know, just want to shoot a video in my business or whatever, go for it. So
for sure.
A little bit better mindset here, but that's sort of like the good side of, you know, the downside of Indiana is like that's the only silver lining in that. But I'm sure that'll change too.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it will. I think Indiana will get there. I think Indiana's always slowly growing in certain aspects like that and whatnot. But okay, more on just, I guess, the community of filmmakers. Do you think Warsaw in particular? Do you think Warsaw has is there a community of filmmakers at all, or is it just you? Mainly, probably just you. I don't know a lot of filmmakers.
There's maybe one or two other people. Yeah, there's a guy,
small handful.
There's a guy in Winona Lake that's running a production company, but that's almost exclusively the commercial side. There's another guy in Warsaw, Mason Geiger. He does a lot of the commercial stuff too, wedding films, things like that. I think I'm the only person in Warsaw that does actual cinematography for films.
And the only one with the Phantom Flex, let's be honest.
Absolutely.
The only one with the Phantom Flex. Yeah. I mean, like, because the community of filmmakers, I mean, I live in Angola, and Angola probably has none besides me, and there's one other person who's been doing it for years, but his stuff is... There's definitely a difference between videography and filmmaking.
Absolutely.
So he's more on the videography side, but he's I guess, more well known than I am. But I guess more people know me as music videos, films, commercials, whatever. But Fort Wayne has a pretty extensive amount of people.
Yeah, it's growing all the time.
Yeah, I think Fort Wayne has a very extensive amount of people, but all of the people don't really know each other. Or a lot of people their brands are afraid they don't want to conflict their brands with each other, which
everybody wants to do stuff on their own, it seems like. And I think that's the really wrong way to approach it, because all of my growing that I've done as a company has been when I've done projects with other people. Like a lot of the films that Taylor has written and directed, that's when I meet a lot of other people. Exactly. And it's that communication and that, you know, talking and working with other filmmakers that allows you to grow.
I mean, and that's what filmmaking is. It's like you have a crew that helps create the story, the film, the anything that you're trying to create.
Too many people try to do it on their own.
Yeah. You know, and I guess I could be to blame for that in a little bit of ways. Like SW Films, I'm the only person within my company, but like, I know for the music video I shot recently, I mean, I hired BTS Photography. Kibway was on there doing sound. I had hair and makeup and stuff involved. Yeah. Of course, you know, just for the amount of the budget that I had. But of course, it's like, you know, films and stuff. Like, okay, if I need a DP, I can hit you or Austin up. If I need high speed, of course, I'm hitting you up. You know what I mean? Like, I think, a lot of people are afraid to mesh their brands together, which is kind of strange to me. And I think Fort Wayne, that happens a lot more than usual.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any employees per se. Like, I don't have any people that work for me full time, and it's not because I don't want people to work for me. It's just whenever I need someone else, it's never for the same thing. So like sometimes I'll need a second photographer for a shoot, or sometimes I'll need like a first AC. Sometimes I'll need someone that can help me out with lighting, or someone that can help me with editing. And anybody that can do all those things is doing it with their own company. It's like there's no one that's out there that's looking for, you know, an hourly job doing all of this stuff. If they already know how to do it, they're already doing it.
Exactly.
So that's why I kind of like hire on like a freelance basis type thing.
Right, exactly. And I think that's doable for, I think Indiana, I don't really know. There's a couple businesses in Fort Wayne that are kind of like full-fledged production companies where they have kind of more corporate positions, really, besides the, I guess.
It's more of a business approach.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And I think what we do is kind of, I guess, in a sense, more of what you would expect, I guess, in the industry somewhat. There's some industry stuff where it's like, okay, Warner Brothers and Universal are definitely going to have tons of corporate positions that'll be used on probably some of the same different films or whatever else. But, you know, I mean, my thing is with Fort Wayne and just some of these other company or other markets is that I feel like Fort Wayne in particular, and I would lump in Warsaw, since Warsaw's a little bit closer, you know, to Fort Wayne than Angola is, I think. Well, actually, no, I think Warsaw's a little bit further. But anyway,
might be.
I think it's just kind of oversaturated in a sense. Do you kind of feel that way with videography or film? I say more on the videography side.
Videography can be very oversaturated.
And of course, photography is the most.
Everybody thinks that they can film a wedding. Everybody thinks that they can shoot a commercial just because they have a camera that says 4K on it. Right. And there's like there are a lot of times where I know for a fact I could do a more cinematic look with my C100, which only shoots 1080p, than someone who's showing up with a Sony camera that can shoot 4K. And it all comes down to your experience with using a camera. So like, I've got, I've got a jib crane, I've got sliders, I've got like a Ronin S, all sorts of like glide cam stuff. And the lenses that I use, each lens has its own unique look, and the different lighting that I use, like it's not just about your camera, it's about everything else around the camera. And your resolution is just one small aspect of that.
Really,
so like
really small
like 1080p versus 4K, obviously 4K is going to look better most of the time, but it's got everything to do with how you move the camera and what is happening in front of the camera. And so that's the big difference between cinematography and videography. And there's a lot of videographers out there, but there are very few people who I would say can do cinematography, because it's a much more specialized approach to videography.
Especially when it comes to just handling, not because cinematography, at least what they told me in film school, is like when if you don't have the lighting aspect knocked down in your cinematography, it's not.
Yep.
I wouldn't really call you a professional if you don't have any proper lighting.
Lighting is so important.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the most. I feel like lighting too is one of the most. I feel like that's where you really have to get really artistic in certain ways. I mean, there's certain. I mean, when you just do the regular, key lighting and all that kind of stuff, it's very simple. But like, say for instance, Chivo, from who does Revenant and of course did Birdman, like how he lit those scenes, and Roger Deakins, of course, legendary. Like how they have lit their scenes, like that's a true cinematography.
You should light with intention, not just to get light in the room.
Exactly.
Right. So it's. Lighting is definitely a make or break thing. Yeah. And a lot of people just only invest in a good camera. And so that's why I try to have a lot of good audio equipment. I like to have a lot of good lighting. And it's that well-rounded balance that allows you to be, an actual cinematographer versus just someone who has a camera.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, so more back on your business. What was probably the hardest shoot you've done in both Fritzel Media and then Rent High Speed? Like, what has been the most challenging productions you've been on? Something to where it felt like you were giving maybe 1,000% of just physical, mental straining work on both different companies. So you can start with Fritzel Media.
Fritzel Media would be touched for sure, because that was the first actual film I had ever done. And it was a feature length, and it was done with a friend of mine, Claude Clark. He's the one that had the original idea, and I basically made the whole thing. So I was the camera department, I was the sound department, I was the lighting department, I was all of that, and I was even like helping writing the script and doing all the editing, all the visual effects work, all the color grading, everything. And it was like that was like 2 years of my life. Like
it took 2 years to shoot.
It was shot in about 1.5 years, and then with all the pre and post production, about 2 years. Wow! And like I had to organize the release of the film when we premiered it. I had shot like the posters, like it was everything. Everything, yeah. Me and like I don't say that to like make it seem like I'm really good at this stuff, because it's hard. It's not easy at all. Yeah, it is. And some parts hard. I didn't do very good at. And I'm okay with admitting that, because it was the first time I'd ever done anything. But it was a lot of work for a long time. And then it premiered, and then like we sold some DVDs and Blu-rays of it, and then it was gone. Like it's done. It's just like 2 years done. What's next? Like
wow. I mean, okay, so with Rent High Speed, I guess what has been the most challenging? And I'm sure that has to be challenging too, especially when a lot of people don't realize, but when you have super, super high frame rates, you have to your lighting has to be on point too.
Yeah, so it's probably a tie between my Michigan shoot and my Gettysburg shoot. So in Michigan, when I rented the NAC HX3, that camera cost $1,700 for one day, and so that showed up the day, like the night before. It was like an 8 p.m. FedEx delivery. And I had to get up early the next morning to drive up to Michigan for this shoot. So I literally had late night to figure out how to use this camera. And the software is, like, you have to plug it into a laptop, run very specific software. And there's so many bizarre settings I'd never heard of, and I was like just like blowing up balloons and popping them as a test subject and it was crazy, like. And then like
that's a movie in itself.
Like, just saving the files to a watchable format. It was like rocket science for this camera, which is, anyways. So and then I had to pack that up. I brought my Miro. I brought my FS700. I even rented out a different camera for different angles called a Kronos, and all this. So I had like $150,000 of camera equipment. Driving up to Michigan.
Yeah.
And then we get there, and I had to rent out specific lighting too. Can't remember what. A Nyla Boxer, I think is what it's called. It's a very, very, very powerful LED light, and I brought like my own LED Fresnels and stuff like that. And so all this equipment's going up there, and it was all for one shot. And so I had all these cameras set up, all these lights, all these trigger cables, so I can trigger all these cameras, different softwares running. And it was all for one shot. So they set up this LCD panel that was basically all the circuitry was exposed, and it was like, it's something that you'd put in like a military jet. Like, it was very high-end stuff. Yeah. And they could only shoot at one time because it's very expensive technology. And so, and like the Miro had like 2 seconds before I could trigger. The Kronos had like 4 seconds. The HX3 had like half a second. Damn. And so I'm triggering all these different things, at all these different settings, frame rates, everything. I'm trying to remember, like, if this frame rate I've got this time, and this one I've got. Yeah. And I mean, I got it. I got the right shot.
That's awesome.
It was very, very hard. And then with the Gettysburg one, it was a similar situation where they had like a 2-hour setup for this big explosion. Yeah. And then I had my Flex, my Miro, my FS700 again, and then I brought my 1DX Mark II just to get as much coverage as possible. And I had like a 400mm massive Canon lens on it. Jeez. And it was one of those things where it was like a lot of pressure of like, you better get this shot, or that's a lot of money down the drain, and there really is no reset. And so like we got done right before sunset, and it went off, and I got it. But
that's awesome.
It's very.
That seems very challenging. That with triggering they all trigger in different times.
Yeah. So like
that sounds very difficult.
So that's actually a very specialized line of work. So it's called a high-speed imaging technician. So like Vision Research actually trains and hires people called phantom techs, where their job is to know how to use high-speed cameras very, very well. And so that's kind of what my other job is to be a phantom tech. That's awesome. And then also like a freelance cinematographer.
Yeah. That's crazy, yeah, because I'd messed that whole thing up. Just because I've never worked with Phantom ever, but like that's crazy. I mean, that definitely seems ridiculously challenging to have to deal with.
A lot of stress, but I have to act like I know what I'm doing.
Right, and that's which is great, because I mean, definitely in those kind of moments. I mean, did you feel like, was there ever a moment at time where you just felt like, all right, damn, I don't know how this is gonna go? You think that you're just kind of winging it in a sense?
Because it's a lot of things that have to happen at once.
Yeah.
And if my reflexes aren't on point, then, because like with like high-speed cameras, a lot of times they record backwards, which is interesting. So they have what's called like end triggers. So like this one, let's say, so it's got a 16 gigabyte internal RAM. It'll fill that in like 2 seconds. If I'm filming at a high frame rate. Yeah. And so what that means is it's constantly circling through this loop. So like it fills up the 16 gigabytes, and then as it's recording forward in time, it's dropping off those last frames. Okay. So it's constantly moving this 2 second buffer, and then once I hit trigger, it'll stop, and I'll get those last 2 seconds, if that makes sense. Jeez. So that's kind of crazy. And some of the cameras, like the HX3, it's like a third of a second. So it's like in human reflex time is like a quarter of a second, so very close to that. So like, it's like as soon as the explosion goes off, my reflex needs to be hitting that button, and if it's not, I missed it.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, I definitely. How much like research and just knowledge education did it just take to learn about all of this stuff with what you know about cameras? Like how much?
8 years.
8 years.
8 years. Never took any classes for it. Never went to college. Never got a degree.
Just did a lot of research on it.
Yeah, and a lot of just figuring it out. So like when I bought my first Phantom, the Miro 3. I didn't know how to use it. I just wanted one. And then I just sat down with the software, and over the course of years, I'm just very good at using it now. Yeah, and that's awesome. It's a lot of trial and error, a lot of just figuring stuff out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that, like, for me, like, how I definitely researched a lot about the cameras, like Red or Ari, you know, and I didn't like, when I was in film school, I guess they taught me more what it was like to be on set and, like, certain things running the set. But technological
that's
stuff...
That's not something that you can just learn on the internet. You need to actually be on
set to understand. I remember just, too, like, they even showed us how to film, well, filming on with Ari film cameras, too. And that was a pretty interesting, like, experience, just because how you have to change the film, like, intense and stuff, which is kind of just incredible in a sense, you know what I mean? But
learning on film is a good idea, because like, even stuff like your ISO, which is that's built into the film. So like you have different ISO speeds of film, and that's stuff you have to know well ahead of time what you're going to use. You can't just change a setting on your camera.
and I mean, I think I definitely want to shoot on film again, because that was just a really cool experience. And like those cameras, I mean, a lot of people love that filmic look, you know, which just digital cameras are getting kind of close to that in a sense.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I mean, definitely filming on with film would be as another, I guess,
if it was affordable. Because like, I mean, you can shoot on like Super 8 pretty easily. Yeah. But like when it comes to like 16mm or something, or even 35mm, that's very expensive to do these days.
Exactly. I mean, okay, so good that you brought up like, you know, Super 8 or whatever. Like, do you have any vintage cameras? Do you have like a collection of different cameras that you keep? I know I have a pretty big collection of like, old cameras that I have.
Yeah, I have a couple old film cameras. I don't use them; they're just to own. But like, I have a Super 8mm projector. So like sometimes I'll just run film through that, like watch some old stuff. But
that's awesome.
None that I can use. It's mostly just to have them.
Right. I mean, if you could film something with Super 8 or 16, like, would you? Because I think a lot of I guess a lot of people kind of think that sometimes when they see like something filmed on Super 8 or 16,
it's got a different feel to it.
It's a very different feel.
Oftentimes you're only filming like 17 or 18 frames a second, and that has a very specific feel to it.
But. Yeah, and I think a lot of people kind of box that into a specific kind of, I guess, look or story in a sense. You know what I mean?
So like with Touch, there's a flashback scene that I shot with the C100, and I would have loved to film it on Super 8, because that was kind of the point. So like, one of the characters passes away, and then there's a flashback to like earlier parts of their life, and so I shot it with the intention of looking like old film. So I just had to think like, you know, what do most old film cameras look like? And so I used I shot like f/22. I needed a really deep depth of field, because that stuff didn't look cinematic. Yeah. I shot with like a longer shutter speed, like 1/24 of a second. Makes sense. I changed it to about 18 frames per second in post-production. I ended up completely desaturating it. I wanted it black and white, even though Super 8 can be in color. But I just wanted it to look in feel even more like that. I ended up doing like the rounded corners of like that almost square look to it, and put some like static overlays, and like muted the contrast, made it shot as wide dynamic range as I could with that camera, and just gave it like an intentionally extra shaky handheld look. So it took a lot to mimic that, and I would have loved to just shoot that in Super 8, because it would have perfectly gotten that feel, because that's the feel I was going for.
That's awesome. I mean, okay, a little history on yourself. Like, first of all, where'd you go to high school at?
Just here in Warsaw.
Okay. Yep. Was there any kind of like, I guess, film or TV class, photography class?
Yeah, they had their like broadcast TV class, which, like I said, I didn't take any of these classes, just because like they had an approach that I didn't really like. They had photography classes, and then I think the year after I left, they actually added a film class, I think, or a video focused class. Yeah. But it was like, from what I had heard from people who had taken these classes, it was just a very like basic understanding of any of it. So it was like, you know, take 2 weeks to learn about shutter speed. But it is like,
right.
Okay. Like at
that, they only teach you the little quick basic shutter speed, ISO.
At that point, I was, you know, shooting some commercials and stuff. So like, I would have taken this whole class and been no further along in my knowledge of filmmaking or whatever. So I just didn't bother taking any of them. But they had a few. Nothing exciting enough to
to want to do it. Right. Yeah, I mean, Angola didn't have none of that. I had a photography class that I took, and I mean, it was cool, but yeah, definitely didn't have nothing like that at all. I mean, have you kind of thought about kind of doing a little bit of education with what you do with like the community?
Yeah,
I definitely think you could definitely do it, especially with rent high speed and everything. There's a lot of stuff.
That's not something that there's readily available classes or information about that stuff. So I'd love to put together some sort of like workshop where I bring in like even other people who are like better than I am at lighting or sound or whatever it might be, and just start with like even photography, because to me filmmaking is the same thing as photography. You just add time and movement to it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Something I heard a long time ago is that to be a good cinematographer is to be a good photographer 24 times a second. Yeah. And so you should be able to take any still frame from your film and it should look like it's intended to be a photo.
Right.
Which movies like The Revenant would definitely be perfect for that. Perfect. But that's a hard thing to do, but it's a good thing to aspire to.
Exactly.
It's nothing you'll ever truly achieve, because not every frame of a video is going to look perfect. But but it's a good thing. So like starting with teaching photography and shooting with intention versus just shooting, and then moving on to like video, and then what cinematography really is, and then specialty stuff like high speed. I'd love to be able to teach that stuff, because it's I don't want to be the only one with this knowledge. Like, it's interesting stuff. Exactly. I want to teach people about it.
Especially because I know me and you are the same age. Like, I know that there's a lot of, I feel like, at least for me, I don't know about like when you grew up in here in Warsaw, but I feel like nobody knew anything about film or was even interested about actually wanting to create in that kind of way. So I feel like giving them a little bit of opportunity to actually go ahead and teach them about what it is to be a filmmaker, how it is to use this equipment.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are interested in like Hollywood and movies and stuff, but there's just no resources to do anything with that unless you go to a college or like Full Sail or something with that specific intention, but nothing around here for sure.
So I think that'd definitely be cool to do. I mean, I definitely think the film family has to eventually come together, and we'll just do a whole huge class or workshop and just teach people, make money. And
we all have our specialties, and from script writing to post production and all that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's definitely a plan later on in life. I think we should all do that. But definitely, I mean, you have all the resources now to really teach stuff with rent high speed, and just to teach more about that, about the camera itself, and just just the specifics of what it takes to shoot very high frame rates. Just to do all that stuff with triggering all those cameras at once is a class in itself.
It's a lot for sure.
Which is awesome.
Which is why I do it.
Awesome. So, to kind of in closing, what is next for Bryce Fritzel? What is next for Fritzel Media? What is next for Rent High Speed? What is it that you kind of plan on doing, in 2019? What kind of aspirations do you have down the line?
I'd like to be a bigger company, in a sense that I would like to have people to work with on a regular basis. I'd like to have a studio. I'd like to have not really a storefront, but like a place that people can come, and I have a creative space, and because I've always been home based, and I'd like to have space to do stuff in. I'd like to have people that specialize in visual effects that I can come to them, in our studio and say, hey, you work on this shot, something like a Corridor Digital on YouTube. Like, that's exactly the kind of stuff I'd like to do, where we have like a whole crew just here, and it's I think it'd be really fun.
That's awesome.
I feel like it'd be much more fun than just doing it all on my own all the time.
Right, exactly. Do you think you'll stay here in Warsaw for a little while, or do you see yourself moving out somewhere else?
I mean, a lot of my clients are from around here, but I am slowly branching out, especially with the high-speed stuff. Like, that stuff happens in Florida all the time, California all the time. But, I mean, I've always wanted to live in, like, Tennessee, but which is kind of like in the middle of all that. But
definitely wouldn't be bad at all. I mean, I think just what I like about your business is it's very unique. Of course, you're already a great cinematographer, and I think it's great that you specify in something very. Yeah. You work with something very specific with the high frame rate.
Yeah, I don't want to just be another video person.
Exactly. And I think it's good to have unique people like that. Like, definitely, I don't know when I'm gonna need the high speed, but definitely soon. I know with my short film that I've been planning and everything, I definitely
everything looks better in slow motion.
Yeah,
Basically
everything does.
Well,
you know what I mean? Well, yeah, certain things. 95% of things definitely do.
If it moves fast, it'd be interesting.
Awesome. So, social medias. Let people know your social medias and where can they find you. Where can they go to websites and rent all of your stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
and rent you and get your equipment.
My high speed stuff. That's all on renthighspeed.com. All sorts of different like packages and pricing stuff there. Most of my stuff just gets posted on Facebook, Fritzel Media, Rent High Speed. On my personal Facebook page, I post random stuff all the time. Yeah. So like I recently invested in a automatic blank gun, which is great for movie props or whatever. I just film that and see what that looks like. Yeah. Put a lot of stuff on Instagram, which is just my name on there. I don't have a company-based one yet.
I'll make sure to tag. This will be on the screen down below. Okay. All that good stuff.
Sounds good. But yeah, I just like posting fun stuff.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I think it's just interesting to watch.
For sure. Awesome. You have any last messages, last quotes that you want to give before we cut here?
Well, if you have a small business and you want a commercial, if you're getting engaged and you want me to shoot your wedding,
there you go. And if you need something in the slowest of motion,
if you have something that's just too fast,
too fast, and you want to capture it,
which I think that's the slogan of Vision Research or maybe Photron when it's too fast to see but too important not to.
I like that
slogan. I wish I had that.
Do you have a slogan for your companies?
No, I don't actually.
Really? I think you should. For Rent High Speed, you got to.
Yeah, I've just been
make a slogan right now on
right
the show.
now.
Right now.
Oh man. See, I've been trying to do this for years, and I can't come up with anything that's just short, concise, solid, and really like means something. Like I feel like I thought of a slogan similar to that when it's too fast to see, and then I saw it on their website, and I was like, really?
Like, wow. Oh, well, you had never seen it before.
And then ever since, I just wish I had that one, and so maybe I'm still bitter about it. Yeah, I can't come up with.
That's funny. Well, you guys know the slogan at SW Films. Every vision is made with cinematic excellence. And Bryce, thank you, my guy, for being here and being on the interview.
It's a pleasure.
So, like I said, guys, go follow his stuff. Go follow him on Facebook, Instagram. You have a YouTube page as well, Fritzel Media?
Fritzel Media.
Go subscribe to Fritzel Media, Vimeo too. Vimeo as well.
I don't post much on Vimeo now.
Well, even if he doesn't post, follow him on Vimeo. Go to his website. See all the great stuff he has there.
If you like seeing the high speed stuff, both Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook for Rent High Speed, I just post random clips there all the time.
Awesome.
I always put like what frame rate it was, what camera, the different settings about it. If you're interested in the technical stuff.
Awesome.
But that could be anything from a light bulb and a mouse trap to an explosion.
Right.
Anything like that.
Awesome. So once again, guys, thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, share the video. And like I said, every vision is made with cinematic excellence.
It's the truth.
Peace.
Back again with my evil ways on that microphone, Laughing at the ones that used to tell me I was just a joke. If I am, then I must be a killer one. I split sides, but that ain't what I really want. What I really want is to make it